Welcome to the Central Connecticut Intergroup Speaker Meeting. My name is Dave and I am an alcoholic.
Hey, Dave.
Alcoholics Anonymous Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experiences, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees. For AA membership, we are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I've asked Joe to read how it works.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Joe.
Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They're such unfortunates. They're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. As some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What in order? I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we've set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we're alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Please help me welcome our speaker, Tim.
Hi. Thank you. I'm Tim. I'm a grateful, recovered alcoholic.
Hi, Tim.
Yeah, I'm going to share a little experience and try to get into the solution as opposed to so much of the mess. I started drinking early in life. Everybody in my family, mother, father, their siblings, everybody was alcoholic. It was in the family. Many people, in my family have died from alcoholism. My father, 60 years old. alcoholism, and so it's kind of destiny. But when you start giving a kid like 3 or 4 ounces of wine at dinner at 7, 8 years old, that probably has something to do with it. A reward for mowing the lawn was always a nice cold beer at 12 years old. So drinking wasn't unfamiliar to me when I started growing up sometime in junior high school, drinking with some other guys. I was kind of seasoned already. It wasn't a problem, and those are the guys I hung out with. I got very involved in sports, so that kind of kept me away from it during baseball season. I played varsity baseball as a freshman, so all my friends were older. So when I was growing up, 18 was drinking age. So I'm 15, 16 playing varsity baseball with 18-year-olds, and their 18-year-olds had parties. Beer, it was all legal, and I'd go to these parties, and I was part of the group. And that kind of promoted my drinking right off the bat. Through college, and forget college. College was, I mean, you had to pay attention in college, but college was a drinking party. It was up in the cold weather up in where I went. It was, you just hang the case of beer out the window of the dorm, and you kept it cold in the wintertime. So, I went through my life knowing, probably from the time I was 18 years old, I knew I was an alcoholic. But I was a functioning alcoholic. I started a nursery business, got married, had a couple of kids, started this business, and I was gung-ho for work. I grew up so poor that there was no way that I was going to let my kids grow up the same way I did. I tell the story about, my mother having 2 eggs and feeding four kids, two scrambled eggs split 4 ways didn't go very far. And that's the way I grew up. I didn't know I was poor. I mean, we lived in a rich town, and our little side of the track was VA housing, and we didn't have any money, but the people around me didn't either. It seemed very normal to me. Never felt less than because of it. But when I was in elementary school, teachers would give you hand-me-down sweaters and things, and I used to be like, I don't want your hand-me-downs. I'm already wearing hand-me-downs. I don't need more hand-me-downs. So that's kind of the attitude I had too. I mean, I'm going to make something of myself in college. I'm going to come out. I started a nursery business. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to make money. I had a lot of drive. I always rewarded myself though. Hard work means you can play hard too. And I had that attitude for a long time. Woken into the wives thing. I mean, I've gone through a couple of wives. First wife had nothing to do with me, but I raised the kids basically on my own, sent them to college, and then I probably started drinking a little heavier. And when you have nobody to answer to, you can kind of go off the deep end, and that's kind of what I always did. Later on, my son went to culinary school, did very well. He got hooked in these. He went to Johnson and Wales, and you're working in these kitchens, and a lot of the kids were taking pills. He got involved in pills and got hooked on opiates. He went to treatment and was doing very well, and he got out of college and he got a good job. So he's working at a country club, doing well. But that one day when he decides to pick up again was the last day. So I get the call and I go find him, and he's face down in bed, and he had passed from an overdose. And that's kind of where I'd say I catapulted my drinking. Didn't want to know anybody. I just wanted to just stay intoxicated, morning, noon, and night. It was very difficult. I was remarried at that point. I put my second wife through hell with that. And there was somebody in our group during the funeral time. I forget if it was before or after, but You know, somebody said, well, Tim's drunk all the time. And well, of course he's drunk all the time. What do you expect? But you know what? When somebody gave me, that was like giving me the get out of jail free card. You know, somebody expects this. I could do this and I'm not going to get, you know, it was just an easy alternative to face it up to what's going on. So I didn't grieve for years. I didn't grieve until I came in this program 9 years ago. I really didn't. All I did was turn my back on this, and it was a huge factor. It was a turning point in my life that I thought I'd never come out of. So, you know, I did this, and finally after a couple of years, and you know, my wife is saying to me, you know, you gotta go get some help. You need emotional help. You need help for your drinking, and I didn't want any help. And finally, she said, well, then I want a divorce. And you know, at the time, I was like, boy, she's got a lot of nerve, you know. How could she want to divorce me, you know? And it's that ego was just, okay, we'll get a divorce. And now I'm living on my own, and I have nobody to answer to. I'm living in this basement of a condo, and I got a big TV and a recliner and a refrigerator, and that's all I needed. I have my own business, another business that I started, and you know, I had enough people working it that it didn't really matter if I showed up. I didn't fire myself for being drunk. I just went along. So I ended up having an accident in my house. This is 9 years ago. I was sitting in the chair and I was very drunk, and I tried to get up and get some more to drink. And as I got up, I picked up speed across the room and I put my head through the wall. I ended up with a concussion and a broken nose and a brain bleed. And, you know, the next day, my ex-wife found me, and she had never even been at this place I was living before. So God sent her over there, I'm sure, and they found me, and they took me to the hospital and found all this out. And, you know, here I am leaving my house, and I've got, you know, a pile of cocaine on a plate in the kitchen, and I've got barbiturates in my system, cocaine in my system, opiates in my system, and my blood alcohol level was 0.45. Well, it's kind of a problem. The doctor told my daughter, you know, he really needs to do something about this. He really can't drink anymore. But, you know, I can't imagine how come his liver is not, no problem with his liver. His liver's not even swollen. That's all I had to hear. You mean I can still go, you know, I can still drink. But, you know, my daughter gave me those puppy dog eyes, and my ex-wife was there, and she sat there for a week with me while I'm in the hospital. And, you know, they all came to me separately and said, you know, we think you should get to a treatment center. The doctor said that's what you need. And, you know, I'm sure they all thought, you know, he's never going to do this. And I was laying there in bed, and it was the third day before I could sign any paperwork because I still was intoxicated. And, you know, I said a prayer. I said, you know, God, if I make this commitment, you know, I'm not going to lie to you. It's time for me to make this commitment. And I made the commitment to God in this prayer, and I got chills up and down my spine. I had my hair sticking up in the back of my neck. I felt a different feeling. And my daughter came in and said, well, are you going to go to treatment? I said, yes, I'm going to go. And they all like perked up. How, you know, this is amazing. What happened to him? But, you know, I got this different feeling. And it was, you know, the gig was up. They all found out what I was doing, that I was wasting my life. Because my daughter would call me and say, you want to come over for dinner? And I'd be like, oh, I'm working too much now. I'm sitting on a bar stool. And, you know, I look back at it, and it's just not the me I want to be. This isn't who I want to be. So I went to a rehab, which was torture. It was not big book based. It was not AA based. We did have AA meetings, but it wasn't really too structured that way. It was a lot of young kids on opiates, and you know, I really related because of my son, and I just started reaching out to some of these kids, and I got this feeling of being useful. It's kind of where it started, and that usefulness with some of these kids, and thinking I could help them, and you know, you maybe can't help them, but if you try to help them, you get this feeling inside. And I come out of there and, they said you should definitely do a halfway house or something. And I'm like, not doing any of that. And they said, well, at least do 90 meetings in 90 days. So I agreed to that. Told my ex-wife, told my daughter, told my sister, this is what I'm going to do. But, I came to meetings and I dreaded meetings. I didn't like them. I had a pink cloud, so that didn't help any. My confidence in myself not drinking again was pretty high. So I was like, I don't need this crap. But now here it comes around April when I'm at day 85, 86. And I'm going, I got 4 more days. And this older gentleman, he's probably my age now. This is an older gentleman came to me. He says, we need a 4th for golf tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. So I get to the golf course like 2 hours early. I got this big book. And, I hadn't even cracked the big book at all. And I thought, well, I better study this a little bit before I play golf with these AA guys. I got to know a little something. So I'm brushing up on my big book there. We went out there and we're playing golf, and we didn't even, it was never even mentioned. We didn't talk about AA. I'm like, that wasn't so bad, But I'm still thinking I got like 3 more days here before my 90 and 90. And the last thing he says to me is, yeah, so-and-so's not here next week either. You're in for next Thursday too. I'm like, it's past my 90 days. So now I feel compelled to keep coming to meetings. Well, it was about a couple weeks after that happened, and I run into this young man that I knew growing up. Not that I was growing up, but when he was growing up, I was coaching him in baseball, and he was having trouble with his life. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, we're in a diner, and he says, yeah, the wife kicked me out. I come home drunk every night. I got a 3-month-old baby. And I said, oh, man, we got to sit down and talk about this. Now I'm in AA. I know what I'm talking about. So I start giving him, advice. And I'm telling him, you got to get to meetings. You got to get a sponsor. So we went around to 3 or 4 meetings that day. And even though we got kicked out of the house, I told him, let's take you home and I'll pick you up in the morning, 6 a.m. We'll do this again. 3 days we did this. He found a guy that he ran into at one of the meetings that he liked, and he asked him to be a sponsor. And he said to me, he says, oh, I'm dreading those steps. He goes, how'd you do with them? And I said, I haven't done them. I said, I'm going to do them just like you. We're going to do them at the same time. So this gentleman that I had asked for a sponsor, he said, whenever you're ready. So I said, I better do this. So I got a sponsor and started working the steps with him. And the biggest thing that I got out of this was the feeling of helping this kid. And I've talked to him a little bit while afterwards, and he's got another kid on the way. Life is good. He's got a sponsee. His life has turned around, and that feeling of seeing somebody 30 years old turning their life around, not drinking anymore, it did something for me emotionally. And I said, that's what the answer to this whole game is. It's definitely being useful and sharing what I can help somebody with. So I got a sponsor, and my sponsor was very cut and dry. This is when we're going to meet. You don't have to call me if you don't want to call me, or you can call me 3 times a day. It's up to you. This is your responsibility. I'm showing you how to go through this book. We'll read every single word from the first 164 pages, and I'm going to teach you how to teach somebody else this book. Because when you're done, you're going to go through that with somebody. That's your commitment to me, is you're going to do this with somebody else. And that commitment I made, and he said, and you're going to do whatever I ask you to do. And he didn't ask anything that was impossible. So the first thing he did was he says, you're going to read every night and every morning, page 86 to 89. You're going to learn those pages. That is going to be a design for living. You're going to wake up in the morning. You're going to pray. And he says, you're going to do steps 10, 11, and 12 before we even finish step 1. You're going to start this on a daily basis. Because steps 10, 11, and 12 is a design for living that you're going to do the rest of your life. So do you want to go through all this, make amends, and then say, okay, now I'm going to be a better person, so let me start looking at myself. He says, no, you're going to start praying now. You're going to start doing self-examination, and every day you're going to do things for other people. So that's 10, 11, and 12 in a nutshell. And you get into that habit. And he stressed routine. You get into a routine that you don't break, a routine that you do every day. And routine, no matter what, if it's making the bed, whatever it is, that routine is going to carry you through this. So we went through, and I'm like, why do I have, selfishness and self-centeredness was kind of flying all over the place for me. I definitely still had a lot of selfishness that as much as I wanted to help other people, it's all about me. It's all about, if I do this, it's because I'm getting something. That has to wean off. So, I take guys through the book, and I tell them the same thing. I look at it like it's that game of telephone when you were a kid. You're passing on a message. When it gets to the 10th person, if the message is the same, then you are successful. And I hear guys talk that I sponsored, and I hear words out of their mouth today that came out of my sponsor's mouth. So that's obviously been a successful progression. I only want to tell them things that are truth. So I go by the book. I was taught that whatever's in the book is what's honest. Everything else is going to be your opinion. So I try to keep my opinions out of it. It's very difficult. People got problems. I was talking to another alcoholic earlier. People have their own other problems that are hard to get away from. So you find yourself leaning into helping their problems, and that's not what we're qualified for. I'm qualified to help you with this program that I did, and it worked for me. My biggest, probably my biggest pet peeve is that people come in and they're told, just go to meetings and don't drink. And, that wasn't going to work for me if I didn't have the program to do. And, it's very simple. The program is to bring you closer to God, form a better relationship with your higher power, call it whatever you want. And that's the meaning of the whole thing. So if that's the meaning for the whole thing, we're going to talk about God. I mean, my sponsor told me that his job was to take me through this thing and then take my hand and hand it to the hand of God. You're passing it off to God. Now, God is what you're depending on. Not depending on your sponsor anymore. You're not depending on your family or wife or anybody else. You're not even depending on your own will. You're depending on God's will. When I learned that, and when I first came in, it was very difficult to say, okay, turn your will over to God. But by starting out reading pages 86 to 89, I got in the habit, and it's a case of I believed in God, but now you have to start trusting in God. That trust factor was what I stumbled over for a while. So we started reading at the beginning of every meeting that him and I had. We started reading the set-aside prayer, and I just want to run this prayer that we said every time. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about myself, about others, about my recovery, and especially you, God. Please help me see the truth. And when I realized that, my way of doing things, I had to be more open-minded. Open-mindedness in this program was the hardest part to grasp. But I sponsor a lot of guys, and being a good example is what I strive for. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I mean, I can't say you got to do this and I don't do it. Prayer and meditation. It was a couple years in before I could actually meditate without falling asleep. So I worked at it. And because I'm telling other guys that this is what you have to do, and I'm having trouble with it. So I wanted to grasp that. Now I look forward to meditation. I look forward to prayer and meditation. It's a staple of my morning and evening, and during the day too. I mean, I could pray during the day for things, but the biggest thing about it is is me trusting in the process. It's that constant trust, 24 hours a day. I don't back down on it. And I've been through a lot of stuff. I've been I've been dead 6 times in my life. I've had outer body experiences. I know God's out there. But when I had this feeling in my own heart about I know more about God than anybody else does, and you can't teach me how to pray, I had to let that go. I had to learn this process, and the process really is routine. It's the routine that I've gotten. I try to pass that on to guys. I really enjoy sponsoring guys. I've got guys that aren't successful, but there's those guys that are successful, and I just look back and go, wow. You know, you get a 30-year-old guy with 3 kids, and he's getting divorced, and he lost his job, and all of a sudden he gets this process, and 6 months later things start coming back to him. That person at that age is going to have this successful life that I wasted 57 years doing crazy things. It's just so good to feel that you're able to offer that. So I'm committed to it, and that's the way I plan on doing it for until I can't do it anymore. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for sharing, Tim. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Very powerful story. I'm glad I heard it tonight. We'll just go around the room. We'll start with you, Pete. Thanks.
Peter Alcoholic.
Peter.
Thanks, Tim. You know, we've been had a meeting in Wallingford, you know, when you came in, you know, and they're running into you now and then. You know, like I said, you went to that meeting for a while, and then all of a sudden, we move on, and we're still sober, and it's practicing the 12 steps to Alcoholics Anonymous and giving it away. Giving it away is a gift, and it's just amazing. And trust and believe in God, not myself. I got to come in here on a daily basis to listen to make sure I hear the message so I can practice it every day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pete.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Lisa.
Your message was fantastic. For me, when the lights come on for somebody else, it's like that spiritual awakening, right? You can have it 1,000,000 times, and it is just, it's the one thing that God's asked me to do. Like, I have a debt I cannot repay, right? No matter how much service I do, no matter how much I give it away, God pulled me from the place where I was dying from alcoholism to be sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so what he asked in return was to give it to others. And, I'm so grateful that I get to do that. Like, it's a privilege. And, we were coming out tonight, and my son's like, what time don't you gotta go? Don't you gotta go? Don't you gotta go? And we're like, and it's so nice because that's how my kids were raised. Like, they got AA to take care of, and they gotta go. So I'm so grateful that you were here. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa.
Joe.
Hi, everyone. Joe, alcoholic. Tim, thank you so much for coming out and sharing your experience, strength, and hope, and powerful message. It just reminded me how my sponsor reinforced to me that the purpose of the Big Book is to get an individual to establish and maintain a relationship with a higher power of their understanding, and that's what you were talking about. You become reliant upon your higher power, and that's the go-to. That's the default mode. Constantly ask your higher power for help, and when I got into that habit, I was able to just get through things that I probably wouldn't have been able to do on my own. And I know my life has gotten so much better in this program, and you got to give it away to keep it, And when thanking my sponsor when he was working with me, he says, "Oh, Joe, you're helping me more than I'm helping you." And I'm thinking to myself, well, obviously they pay these guys to say that. but when you do start taking somebody else through it, you realize that is the truth. Thank you again.
Thanks.
American Alcoholic.
Eric.
And yeah, this was great. I've never heard you, but I'll just quickly say you're one of the first guys that put their hand out and welcomed me to the meeting in Bristol when I moved there 2.5 years ago. And I was talking about that earlier today, and that was a big thing. When you move somewhere new and somebody extends their hand. So yeah, you have a powerful message. And thanks again for coming.
Thanks.
Once again, thanks for sharing tonight, Tim. Appreciate it. We'll end with the responsibility statement. I am responsible when anyone, anywhere, reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA to always be there, and for that I am responsible.
Good time.